pastimes, so to speak. Of course, more intensely in the case because being disciples, but the same principle is there. What next? It brings us closer to Krishna. The business of the Guru is to bring us closer to Krishna. So we'll start by singing, we usually call it Ye Anilo Premadana. Has a longer name. Just let me get it on my computer a minute. And this is a song which expresses this mood of separation, this mood of devastation, which I'm sure many of the disciples, if not all, of Gopal Krishna Maharaj are feeling. These 2 days has passed now, 2 days ago, today's the third day, who is leaving this world. Yeya Nilo Premadana. It's a song by Narottam Das Thakur. Have you found it? Can you tell us what page it is on?
Some book 74, some book 79, some 79.
779, 74, something like that. I hope I can open it. There's a problem with my computer. Here we go. It's a song by Narottam Das Thakur, and he is lamenting due to separation from the Lord and his associates. As we know, or may not know, but we may have heard, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he asked Ramananda Roy, what is the greatest suffering? What did Ramananda Roy say? Separation from devotees. I know no greater suffering. It is in the association of devotees that our devotionam pasangam amavirya sangvido, that our devotional service grows. Our attraction to Krishna grows. Without the association of devotees, it's just like a lotus flower. Some of you have seen the growing lotus flower. Yes, the sun is there, the ground is there, the connection is there with the ground through the stem of the lotus, but without the association of devotees, the lotus will wither up. It will wither. The lotus needs water. It needs the association of water. It has to be surrounded with water. Otherwise, although it's connected, it will wither up. So, sadhu sangha, association of devotees, in that association, we hear chant about Krishna and serve. They remind us of Krishna. And we're particularly, in this particular song, of course, it's referring to eternal associates of the Lord who bring into this world that which is lacking, that which we have forgotten. They bring the spiritual, the transcendental world into our midst. And without their association, even Srila Prabhupada, in his poem, which one was it? Viraha Ashtakam or Vrindavan Vrindavan Bhajan? I can't remember. How much he was lamenting the loss of his spiritual master's personal presence and how everything has fallen into darkness. Well, we see that's maybe in the heart we feel like that, but we see that the great devotees, and Srila Prabhupada is, in some ways, is very exceptional. But they leave behind their legacy, of course, but they leave more than that. Especially Srila Prabhupada has left behind us the vehicle which he manifested in the form of this movement and so many other aspects therein, which anyone can still take shelter of. And one can still progress towards that goal, back to Godhead. The objective goal, why Krishna comes, why Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes, why the pure devotees come. Do they come to this world for sightseeing? Do they come for this world for trying to enjoy their senses? They're bored of the spiritual world? No way. They simply come to this world to try to please the will of the Lord, to try to awaken within the hearts of the forgotten souls love for Krishna, devotion to Krishna. And it's only they who can do that. They may empower others, but the principle then is the same. The association of those who have that love for Krishna is the most valuable of all association. Without that, it's like our life is void. It's like the life is taken out of the body. So we'll sing this song of Narottam where he is lamenting the most of Lord Chaitanya's associates have gone, so to speak. Narottam appears in the next generation after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his followers. So most of them have departed, and he's very much in the feeling of separation. You probably have a similar term in the French language. Is someone translating for the non-French speaking devotees? Non-English speaking, rather. You probably have a similar term. Separation makes the heart grow fonder. You have something like that? It's a fact. Even materially, to some extent, we experience that. When we're away from our lover, or somebody very dear to us, it's a very painful experience, mixed with all kinds of various emotions, fear and lamentation and hankering, and so many other emotions may be experienced. But it brings us to the point of absorption. Absorption, more so often than in physical presence. We become absorbed in remembering them. And, of course, remembering the pure devotees of the Lord is the most purifying memory, so to speak. We'll sing the song, and then we'll try to share a little historical, of course, to hear a little bit about the pure devotees of the Lord and their assistance is a little historical, but it's also very meaningful and very practical, applicable in our lives, relevant, and it's very purifying. So let us sing. Is it available? Everyone has access? I doubt it, but as much as you can, some of you know it. It's in the songbooks, page 74 or 79, is that correct? 79, and some books 74, apparently. The French one, I don't know. The red one. And you can get it on your mobile if you have mobile reception if you need. ye anila premadana Corona Patron Ye Anila Premadhana Corona Patron Ye Anila Premadhana Corona Hino Prabhu Kota Kela Charya Tako Hino Prabhu Kota Kela Charya Kaha Mora Swarup Rupa Kaha Sanatan Kaha Mora Swarup Rupa Kaha Sanatan Kaha Dasa Raghunatha Patita Pavan Kaha Dasa Kahamora Bhattajuva Kaha Kavira Kahamora Bhattajuva Kavira Ekakale Kota Kela Goro Nata Pashane Kutibo Mata Anale Pashibo Pashane Kutibo Shiva Hare Shiva Gauranga Gunera Niri Kota Kele Pabo Some of you are coming a little too early on the first note. Se sabo sangira sange ye koilo bila ye se sangma Sangira sange ye koilo bila se sangha napaya kande Narottamada Se Sangha Paya Kande Narottamada Yanilo Premadana Karuna Pacho Premadana Pacho No Prabhu Kotagela Charna Taku No Prabhu Kotagela Charna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Shtuta Sati Shri Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtuta Sati Shri Shri A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai Shri Shri Krishna Balaram Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Govinda Madhava Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar Ki Shri Shri Radha Partha Sarati Ki Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Grand Gopal Imam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Timane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Prachadine Nirvasesha Shunyavadi Pastichari Shutana Om Jnana Timrandasya Gananjana Shalatmya Chakshuralmalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Shapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamaham Dadati Swapadantikam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Gopal Krishna Goswami Iti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Prachadine Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Paschachade Chitarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Yeah. So, I thought we would just read one verse, maybe two verses before we hear a little bit about His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj. And these verses are from the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. I believe is on the verses on the board, is that right? 1869. So please repeat. Na cha tasman manusheshu kaschin me priyakritamaha bhavita na cha me tasmad anyak priyataro bhuvi na cha tasman manusheshu kaschin me priyakritamaha bhavita na cha me tasmad anyak priyataro bhuvi. This verse is familiar to probably most of you here today. Anyone like to repeat the verse? Na cha tasman manusheshu Kaschin me priyakritamaha. Bhavitana cha me tasmad. Anya priyataro bhuvi.
Nacha tasman manusheshu.
Nacha tasman manusheshu.
Kaschin me priyakritamaha.
Kaschin me priyakritamaha.
Bhavitana cha me tasmad.
Bhavitana cha me tasmad.
Anya priyataro bhuvi.
Anya priyataro bhuvi. Nacha tasman manusheshu. Kaschin me priyakritamaha. Bhavitana cha me tasmad. Anya priyataro bhuvi. Ladies. Nacha tasman manusheshu. Kaschin me priyakritamaha. Bhavitana cha me tasmad. Anya priyataro bhuvi. I'll just go on to the translation of this verse. Krishna, this is one of the concluding verses of the Bhagavad Gita. Some of Krishna's, in fact, almost his last words, there's a few more verses, where he says, there is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. What is this referring to? Which servant? One who preaches this message of Bhagavad Gita, particularly to the devotees. First, we understand that intrinsically, constitutionally, everyone is a devotee. Prabhupada describes how the pure devotees of the Lord are more merciful than Krishna. That's conceivable. Why? Because they are representing Srimati Radharani, who is personification of compassion. Deep word. But what is that message of Bhagavad Gita that makes one so dear to Krishna, if you preach it? What is that message? Is it Denosmin Yatadehe? What is it? Is it Sarvadharman Parityagya? Is it Manmana Bhava Madbhakto? Which is it? Well, many other verses are there. Oh, absolutely relevant. But the ultimate message of Bhagavad Gita, which is really, you could say, the beginning of spiritual life, is Manmana Bhava Madbhakto. That's the beginning, practically. Yes, it's the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita in one sense, but it's the beginning, you could say, of one's pure devotional service. Manmana Bhava Madbhakto. That's the message that's to be preached. Of course, it may not be preached immediately. Everything that Srila Prabhupada has given us in terms of temples, books, processes, and all the other variations of services which we have are to bring us to this point. This is the objective goal of sadhana, isn't it? To remember Krishna. Don't we repeat that verse? What is that verse? Smartavya satatam Vishnu. Who knows that verse? Vishmartavna jatachit. The purpose of all of the practices and regulations is to remember Krishna, isn't it? Should we not question ourselves if we're not remembering Krishna? That's the purpose of this movement. To remember Krishna and remind others or at least to prepare the way. It's like you're preparing the soil. So that, Giri Govardhan Prabhu has for decades been worshipping the Lord by growing roses for the Lord's pleasure. He has to prepare the soil for months before he can grow those roses. And it doesn't stop there. There's so many other things, but the soil has to be prepared. You can't just put the rose into a stone. The soil has to be ready. So this movement is also preaching the message of remembrance to Krishna to others, to prepare them so that they come to the point of being able, let's say, being able to hear about Krishna. That's what this basically temples are for. Places where people can come and hear about Krishna. Yes, we have to wash the pots, we have to clean the floor, we have to worship the deity. Of course, that's central to everything. So many management is there, and fundraising is there, and festivals, and so many things, but the ultimate purpose behind it is to remind us of Krishna, isn't it? If we come here and think of ourselves, we're not getting very far. Half the time we're just thinking of our crazy nonsense, our illusions, total illusions. But it's really not. It's meant to transcend all of this. Of course, it takes time. It takes a lot of work. A lot of Prabhupada had to dedicate his blood. Like Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj said that every member of this Gaudiya Math, kind-hearted devotee in this Gaudiya Math, has to be willing to shed 200 gallons of blood for the spiritual corpus of every conditioned soul. That means you have to it's pretty hard work, even if you are a realized soul, to bring others to this point of realizing. The previous verse, we've already mentioned it, that one who preaches this message of Bhagavad Gita to the devotees, primarily is mentioned. One who explains this supreme secret. He's not even preaching the message. This secret of the Bhagavad Gita, Manmana Bhava Mad Bhakto. This is what it means to surrender. It's not some kind of, bow down, mister, surrender, or else. It's actually to give up all other religion, means all other thoughts, basically. To give up all these other things which we think are so damned important in our minds. This thing, that thing. And just focus on what will please Krishna. What does Krishna want? What is our real position? We only exist for the pleasure of Krishna. We have no other purpose of existence. Everything else is a horror movie. Relatively speaking. We exist for the pleasure of Krishna. Bhagavad Gita is to help us to realize that, to come to the point where we accept that fact and live by it. So one who explains his supreme secret, it's like explaining something to a child. You don't start off at the end, you start at the beginning. But you don't stay at the beginning. If all you teach your child is 2 + 2 = 4, that's correct. But that's not enough. That's the beginning, isn't it? But that's the foundation. If you don't have a foundation, you don't get much of a building. Foundation has to be there. Growth has to be there. So let's go, anyway, we could go on and on. Why I'm bringing it up? Because Gopal Krishna Maharaj, I would say, exemplifies this aspect, Srila Prabhupada's unlimited compassion by facilitating the conditioned soul's opportunity to become Krishna conscious. He worked tirelessly throughout his life, unwavering. I never ever saw a moment, and of course I didn't know him very intimately, but I never saw a moment that he was not engaged in devotional service to Srila Prabhupada and his mission. Not a moment. Some people may, from their imperfect perception, say, well, he had this and that, or he made a mistake, or this. But who are we to judge? A mistake is not an external measure. A mistake is when the internal intention is other than fulfilling the mission of one's spiritual master and Krishna. That's a mistake. Anything separate from that is a mistake. In the course of trying to serve the will of the spiritual master, if it appears from other conditioned souls' imperfect perception that a mistake has been made, that's simply what we can say, another aspect of the illusory energy. He exemplified this complete, absolute surrender, you could say. Putting aside just about everything else. Such an austere. I saw in his will, he was saying, one of the things he mentioned in his final will was, please, don't go away, and try to find an easy life, an easy path. That's not the business of a devotee in one sense. What does it mean, an easy path? That's another topic. But, it isn't always easy to try to preach Krishna consciousness, especially in an institutional situation. Everyone's got their own, idea of everything. And it's difficult to change that so that it becomes, Krishna's idea rather than our idea. I like, I don't like, etc., etc. It's a real challenge. And most people are pretty messed up, even materially. It's very hard to do that. And Prabhupada, if you read Lilamrita, which is only a drop in the ocean, of what Prabhupada had to deal with when he first started this movement. Kind of incredible craziness and challenges, which he had to do throughout, even to the last breath. He sacrificed for the welfare or the sake of others. And I would say, from my experience, which is whatever limited experience it is, Gopal Krishna Maharaj followed that mood of Srila Prabhupada throughout his life. Some of you may feel differently, so everyone's entitled, of course, to our own impressions, but we're trying to share something here which might be relevant to us. So let's read something a little bit about. I think you spoke a little bit, Maharaj, the other day. I don't know what you spoke. What did you speak? What did you say?
I have also written.
No, I mean, what did you speak the other day on Sunday? Did you talk about his history? What did you talk about?
His services.
Services.
Is called his loyalty to the movement.
Okay, great.
And he would travel also, even if he come back at 2 o'clock, but he would be on the altar.
Amazing, huh? Thank you. So there's no harm in hearing this again and again, is there? We forget. Sometimes we don't even remember in the first place to forget. I never forgot. I never heard it in the first place. You sat there, you never even heard it. So what is there to forget? Okay, so 2 days ago on Sunday, as you probably know, His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj, whose picture is at Prabhupada's lotus feet here, departed from this world. We'll just hear a bit about his lifetime of dedication to Prabhupada. Not much about his life before that. Although he was born on August the 14th, 1944 in New Delhi. So he was nearly 80 years by our calculation of age. And he didn't really have a particularly spiritually inclined upbringing. Not overly, like any Hindu family was there. But his parents did give him, like traditional Hindu families, a nice name. They gave him the name Gopal Krishna. That was his birth name, not just his initiation name. They gave him the name Gopal Krishna. So right from the word go, it was prophetic, you could say, his life service to Prabhupada. But he was a very talented, from even the material perspective as well, no doubt a very pious family. But from the material point of view of education, he was very educated. And he graduated. He graduated from the University of Delhi. You can understand his kind of service in Delhi was probably his most intense in sense of all of his services, how much he served Prabhupada's mission in Delhi. You may know that he, just a few weeks ago, he inaugurated or oversaw the installation of the deity's name, Radha Madhava, Panchatattva, and Gaurnitai or Sitaram? Sitaram, wasn't it? Sitaram, Lakshman, Hanuman, of course Gaurnitai also. Panchatattva are inclusive in Gaurnitai in Panchatattva. So Panchatattva deities, we actually saw them before they were installed. Right? Who was with us? You were with me when we went to see the deities? Somebody was with me. Maybe nobody here. But they took me into the inner rooms where the priests were preparing the deities before they were installed. And we had darshan of them as they were painting the eyes and so on and so forth. Because I went for the opening, but they changed the date just a few weeks before, and I'd already had all my bookings and everything, or our party had, so we couldn't stay those few extra days to be there on the installation. Most gorgeous deities. I've never seen a Hanuman so beautiful in my life. He's such a sweet, beautiful looking deity of Hanuman. Anyway, that was the last temple that he personally, you could say, was present at the inspiration. There are other temples coming up to be opened, and that's the 18th temple opened in Delhi. The 18th. The 18th temple. Incredible, isn't it? You know, first time I went to Delhi in 1976, the temple was about a little bit bigger than the hut which I stay in down there. A little bit bigger. Not much. The temple room was no bigger than that. The deities were around the corner. It was like at an angle, and then there's a little box temple room and one other room, and that was basically it. That was ISKCON Delhi. Radha Partha Sarati, rented house, living there. And now they live in a grand palace, and they've expanded into 18 other amazing temples. They are not little temples. If you see Rohini, you'll almost faint. The size of that temple is a palace. It's enormous. I mean, what can we say, relatively to what we used to. It's nothing compared to, you could say, the realms of the demigods or, Dwarka or something. It's amazing. And so beautiful inside. You've been there? Rohini? Yeah, Rohini. Such a gorgeous building and gorgeous temple. So beautifully decored inside, very expert. And there are so many of them in Delhi like this. They're rebuilding Punjabi Bagh. Somebody has donated the land next door. The land alone is worth God knows how much, 10 crores or something. And he's also donated the money for building the temple, a huge donation, 20 crores or something crazy. It's inspired by Gopal Krishna Maharaj. He's so inspirational. We're not going to read it. Even Modi has written a message. Prime Minister Modi has written a message on his departure. He's so influential, so powerful. Not powerful from a material point of view, but because he's so chaste to Srila Prabhupada. So empowered. We can hardly imagine. We may criticize, we may say, oh, this and that. You can say whatever you damn well like. But do something. Do something to what Krishna wants. There's no one more dear to me, the one who's giving this message, facilitating this message being disseminated within this world. So he was a very good student. Now, another interesting thing, I was with him, we were together in his room about 1 month ago, actually. I think the 6th of April? Something like that. More or less exactly a month ago. And we went to the Radhaparthasarji temple, and he called us myself into his room, and we spent about 2 hours together talking in his room. And he was talking a lot about France, believe it or not. And there's a reason for that. There are several reasons. And one of the reasons was because he has a disciple here. He really wanted to talk about what was going on with that disciple. That was one thing. And then we talked about his time in France. Now, I don't think as a devotee he visited France, did he? When? Just after, yeah. So one time he came, but since then he's not been. We never talked about that. What we did talk about, he started talking in French. He speaks fluent French. Yeah, because he got a sponsorship from the French Sorbonne University. He studied in France for 1 or 2 years in the Sorbonne University. His sister was working here. He also spent time in Montpellier. His sister was in Montpellier. And, he had it was in his heart. He was like getting excited talking about, France, so to speak. But that wasn't the only thing. So, he got a scholarship from the French, it says government, but he got, then he went to Canada after some time here, studying business management here. Then he went to Canada, and ironically enough, to Montreal. Of course, Montreal, some of you know Montreal. Vishesha, you know Montreal? You've been there? You went there? Huh? Vishesha knows very well Montreal. You were born in Montreal?
No, I'm born in Paris.
Born in Paris, but your family are from Montreal or what?
No, my parents immigrate.
Pardon?
They immigrate, my parents.
You hear it?
Immigrate Canada, her parents.
They moved to Canada.
Yeah, when I was 13.
Okay, so you were born in Paris and then you moved to Canada. So you're French. But you have a Canadian streak in you. Strong Canadian streak. So Montreal is mixed, but it's a largely French-speaking place. Huh? It has a history of our own Parampara as well, of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur and so on. And there he got his master's degree in business management, and it was there that his connection with Srila Prabhupada awoke. Huh? At least, in this lifetime at least. He was devout, of course, a long way from home. In 1967, he was there in Montreal. And a long way, 66, 67 he was there. A long way from India. Not many Indians in those days. If you remember, I don't know any of you can remember, even in England, in my childhood I didn't know what an Indian looked like. I thought they were from North America with feathers in their hair. I didn't know what an Indian was, what we call Indian, like this brown man over here. Indian man. Hello, Shanananda Prabhu. We didn't know what Indian people looked like. We never saw one. I didn't see an Indian person till about, I don't know what year, I can't say for sure, but it was certainly not until I was probably late in my teens. Never saw a single Indian. There wasn't one to my knowledge in the town I was in. It's only when Indian restaurants started coming in. Indian restaurants. One opened in the town and we went, probably the first time I ever saw an Indian person. We went to an Indian restaurant. So I guess 66, 67 in Montreal, there were very few Indians at that time. in Montreal. So he was kind of feeling a bit like, something was arising in his heart, looking for God, but also he go to churches, it said he went to the church sometimes, he went to there was a Sikh Gurdwara, he went there, and he was looking for a temple, but where is the temple? Where is the temple? There were no temples in England either. None. 1966, there were no temples in England, Hindu temples. And someone told him, one of his friends at college or something, or he started to work. He got a job, so he was probably there a bit earlier than that. And he was working for a company called Pepsi Cola. If ever you've heard of Pepsi Cola, it's not as famous as Coca-Cola, but it's still it used to be more famous, I think, in those days. It was like a rival. They were like rival companies. Same product almost. So he was marketing Pepsi Cola. Krishna has his plans, it's not by chance he was marketing Pepsi Cola. So one of his friends or someone he was with he was saying there's a Hindu temple, and one of his friends, not a Hindu, but a Canadian, I think that some Americans have opened a Hare Krishna temple here in Montreal. And he found the address and he went to the temple. And Labor Day, had a day off from work, I guess, just passed now, just a few days ago, May the 1st. He went to the temple and they told him that very soon the Guru of the Hare Krishna movement is coming. The Guru is coming. So he came, and sure enough Prabhupada was there. Actually the day before Prabhupada's arrival, and he stayed. And he asked if he could have some service. And the first service they gave him, believe it or not, was to clean Prabhupada's apartment. So he spent the whole, whatever time it was, cleaning the doorknobs, cleaning everything, ready for Prabhupada. And the next day he met Prabhupada in the evening. Prabhupada was very pleased. Prabhupada, whenever he see an Indian coming to his Western temples, he would pay special attention. Because there weren't many coming in those days. There weren't many to come. He'd pay special attention to them, And he did that with Gopal. Very special attention. And just, without getting into all of the glories of his, you could say, the opportunities and the glories which he later on underwent. So he met Prabhupada on June the 1st, 1968, in Montreal. Just a few weeks after he first came to the temple. He said, I was very fortunate to receive this as my first assignment in devotional service, which meant cleaning Prabhupada's rooms. Very fortunate to receive this, my first assignment. His whole life was based on this first principle, to clean Prabhupada's house, to try to keep it clean, not just with brushes and pans, but in terms of our behavior, our practices, our chastity to Prabhupada, and so on. His whole life was based on that. Trying to protect Prabhupada's movement and sustain it. If you read his will, you'll see how much his heart. But one unique thing, he had amazing respect for anyone outside of Prabhupada's immediate ISKCON, you can say. Any other Gaudiya Vaishnava, any other, genuine spiritual person, he was so respectful in their presence. It wasn't like, looking down or, sideline. Very respectful, but 100% chaste to Prabhupada's movement. Dedicated. He made that the instructions of Srila Prabhupada his life and soul for sure. Absolutely. And we all know, especially in terms which we'll come on to now, some of the special features of that service to Prabhupada. When I first met Srila Prabhupada, he said, the motivation to surrender to Krishna or God was already there. It was in me there somewhere. And 2 weeks after meeting him, I knew that Lord Krishna wanted me to surrender to Srila Prabhupada. He very quickly realized that my life is meant, Krishna wants me to surrender. Excuse me. He said, I did not know the importance of hearing at that time. This is a little akin to Srila Prabhupada's personal experience in some ways too. But my only small qualification was that I was very respectful to Srila Prabhupada from the very first day I saw him, and I would stay for his lectures till the end and leave only after he had left the temple. Even he said he didn't really necessarily understand what was going on or what it was all about, but he would never leave. He would stay and listen. And we know that from Srila Prabhupada's own personal testimony, that he would stay, listen to his own Guru Maharaj, even if he didn't understand, of course. Prabhupada says like that. And that, he said, was my qualification. And that was the qualification. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said, he's qualified because he hears nicely. This hearing from the Guru. Yes, so we'll move on. And then, we're moving on a little bit. Prabhupada was in Montreal for 3 months. That's the time when he trained. How can you describe them? The 3 couples who went to London. That incredible warriors of Lord Chaitanya's and Srila Prabhupada's mission, who went into the battlefield, into Europe, and spread Krishna consciousness in Europe. Shyam Sundar and all the others. Yeah, all of them. Prabhupada trained them there how to preach in this place. And he was there during that time. He was coming every day practically to hear from Prabhupada in Montreal. And he was still working. He continued to work for quite some time. Prabhupada continued, encouraged him to work. But it was amazing how from that time, Prabhupada, he was writing, and of course he'd write to Gopal Krishna would write to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada would write back every 2 weeks almost, for months and months and months after that. Letters were coming back and forth between Prabhupada and Gopal Krishna, right from the beginning, even though he was not initiated. It was something very intimate there, something very special going on. So we went forward a little bit here, to 69, he wasn't initiated yet, this is March. Prabhupada wrote a letter to him and he said, your desire for opening many temples is very laudable. Just see, even then he was thinking, I want to open many temples. He wasn't initiated, just came. He said, I want to open up many temples. Prabhupada said, your desire is very laudable. You know what laudable means? Huh? Very appreciated, highly appreciated. Highly appreciated. But, unless you prepare some temple worshippers, then the temples will remain vacant. We're not here just to open temples. The purpose is that, people come. Devotees. There's got to be devotees in the temple to worship. It should be organic. Sometimes things are not so organic, we kind of dump things on a small number. But everything grew organically during Prabhupada's time. The temple was just a room. Nothing more than a room in the beginning. One room. And gradually as numbers grew, then buildings grew also. Prabhupada was seeing the future. So he was seeing, like somehow or another, he was thinking in his heart, many temples, which happened. Not just in Delhi, dozens and dozens of other temples he oversaw and opened, so to speak, or inspired others to open. In Bombay, in Punjab, in all different areas of India, in Uttar Pradesh, and so many places, Haryana, and so on. Prabhupada then went on to say So in this age, it is more important to create devotees than to construct temples. My Guru Maharaj advised me to give more stress on literary work, such as publishing books and magazines in Krishna consciousness, and temple opening is a secondary. That was not the first letter by any means, but that was one of the first indicative letters from Srila Prabhupada to Gopal Krishna Maharaj about his future. And you see, the temples are not empty. Not like the Hindu temples you go to. Nobody's there except for a priest who pokes his nose out whenever anyone comes, or does an arti every now and again. Isn't it? They're flourishing. There's hundreds of devotees everywhere. Hundreds of thousands of people coming. Hundreds of thousands. And hundreds of devotees. None of these temples has less than 30 brahmacharis. Some of them 200 brahmacharis. Not to speak of the grihastas. Hundreds, and you've seen in Noida. Lokanath Maharaj is one of the closest friends of Gopal Krishna Maharaj. They've worked together for decades in India preaching to spread Prabhupada's mission and overseas. So anyway, different letters. Another one comes, that was in March, also in April, because he was working for Pepsi Cola as what was he doing? Marketing. What does that mean? Sales. How to sell Pepsi Cola. He was trained in sales. Distribution of a product. So Prabhupada wrote, so my immediate best service for you is to help organize the sale promotions of my books. That was before he was initiated. You see these two, probably from, perspective point of view, probably the two most prominent, I may be wrong, but it looks to me the two most prominent features of his, let's say quantitative contribution. Book distribution, production, and temple opening. Isn't it? And making devotees. I don't know how many disciples. He got 30,000, someone told me. 30,000 disciples. I don't know if it's true. Someone mentioned 30,000 disciples the other day. I don't know if it's true. But he's got a lot. Mostly in India, but all over the world also. In Russia also. He preached, he was one of the first, Mandakini was the first Westerner after Prabhupada left in, 71 or 2? 71. When he went to Moscow, the next person to go was Mandakini. You were French. Mandakini was the next Western devotee to go to Moscow. But then he was the next, because Prabhupada made him a GBC of Moscow, of Russia. In 1976, he made him the GBC. So he was going there, in disguise, of course, primarily introducing Prabhupada's books in, official circles. Book fairs, shops, libraries, this sort of thing. He brought Prabhupada's books in like that, through official channels. Incredible. And then in May 69, Srila Prabhupada wrote to say, there's a lot of other letters in between if you want to read, but we're not going to mention them. Different things were going on. As your name is already Gopal Krishna, there is no need for changing it. You will now be known as Gopal Krishna Das. So that was 1969 in May. 25 years old, I guess, at that time. Regarding back to Godhead, Prabhupada wrote a few days after his initiation. I wish you take charge of organizing the sales in the libraries. If you write letters on behalf of the society, will that not be good? I suggest that you may take a little responsibility for organizing the sales, and wherever you will direct, they will dispatch the sample copies. In other words, Prabhupada wanted him to take charge for the distribution of Back to Godhead. Marketing. Right from the word go, he was involved in distributing Prabhupada's books in a very Not a small time running on the street, but organized way. You can, another letter which came, actually it's interesting, Hamburg. Prabhupada wrote a letter to him in September 69. He was probably in Hamburg. And Prabhupada said, Bible, that God is for the humble and meek, Prabhupada wrote. Prabhupada's writing. The Bible, that God is for the humble and meek. He just summarizes. Similarly, Vaishnavas are taught by Lord Chaitanya to become humbler than the grass, more tolerant than the tree. Now, Gopal Krishna Maharaj certainly was a personification, although not everyone can understand this, of humility and tolerance. Tolerance, yes. Humility, yes. But how? If you remember, when Hari Vilas Prabhu asked Srila Prabhupada in Paris, what is humility? What did Prabhupada say?
It's when you know that your bank account or everything will not save you. No.
Nothing in this world will save you. Absolutely nothing. Neither your wife, neither your money, neither everything. Only Krishna can save you. When you're convinced of that, that is humility. If you think anything else other than Krishna can protect us, or if you think anything else belongs to anyone but Krishna, that was his life. He said, nothing for me, everything for Krishna. And if you read his will, you can see a lot of people, they think that the leaders of our movement, hopefully there's no exceptions to this, have a huge bank account in Zurich with countless billions of dollars in their bank account in Zurich. Famous place to keep your Swiss bank account, isn't it? So if you do hear or read his will, you'll see how much money he had in his Swiss bank account. Well, first of all, he doesn't have one. He has a bank account in America, and he has $2,000 in there. Only reason is because he has to keep it there, otherwise he loses his green card for America. And it's not even in his name. It's a mixed account. He's just one of the signers on the account. So he left all of his property, which amounted to, in value, huge amounts. Not one property was in his name anywhere. Not one vehicle, not one property, nothing. Absolutely nothing was in his name. He had no bank account in India, none. He had some clothes, which he said, you can distribute amongst my disciples, who as you wish. He said, my deities are the main thing. They must be worshipped on the temple altars in the various temples. Otherwise, I'm afraid that somebody may take them and stop worshipping them. And that will not be good. So they should not be taken by an individual, but worshipped on the temple altars. And he said, I've got one, I have a computer and 2 mobiles for their worth. My secretary can decide what he wants to do with those. And other than that, he said, I've got one valuable possession, a Rolex watch. Ah, got him! We got him! These big swamis wearing their Rolex watches. He said that was a gift from Srila Prabhupada in 1977. That's all he had in his will. His will was all about remaining faithful to Srila Prabhupada and dedicating yourself to the mission. That's all. That's the real wealth, not $1 billion in a bank account in Zurich. Who cares for that? That cannot protect us. But this spirit which he has is that's humility. Total dependence on Krishna and Prabhupada. Amazing. Humble and meek. They inherit the kingdom of God. And then in October 69, Prabhupada wrote to him, you can take charge of printing the French edition of Back to Godhead. He wrote to Gopal Krishna. French edition. He spoke French. He was in Montreal. There was no edition in Paris or in France at that time. That is nice, but the thing is, it must be regularly published every month. Again, just a few weeks later, Prabhupada wrote, the more you serve Krishna, the more you get better strength to serve him. In other words, the more you sacrifice and give your everything, whatever little Krishna has given us, we offer that in service, then the more strength we get. Otherwise we get weak if we hold back. A few weeks later, Prabhupada wrote, I'm very glad to learn that you are trying to distribute our books. Please continue with this program as it is so very important. Especially try to place our books in the schools and libraries. Our literatures are for the intelligent class also. Again, books, magazines, books. Pushing. You take this on. Anyway, we'll move on. There's many letters in the same light. Interesting, actually, Prabhupada also wrote to him that if he was going to go to Paris, he gave him the address of two devotees. One of them, Janardhan, actually came to Paris, the original translator of some book literature in Montreal. And the other devotee, I forgot his name, began with S. What was it? Surdas. And this Surdas was living exactly, you know where we start our Rath, I've got his address, everything, the exact number. He was living exactly where you start your Rath Yatra festival. Right there, exactly, in those buildings, on the angle there, the first devotee was staying in an apartment right there, looking down where now the Rath car sits before you start the Rath parade. The other one, Janardhan, was staying in, what was it, somewhere on the eastern suburbs out there, on the eastern suburbs. I got the address somewhere. I looked it up. It's a fair distance out, and he said, when you go, if you do go, you can stay with them. So that was back in 1969. And so then he carried on. He was going to, even when he went to New York, he was still working for Pepsi Cola. Prabhupada still encouraged him, help to organize the distribution of my books. It was always in that regard, because you're a sales marketer. It's your profession. So he was doing that, and then eventually, of course, he gave up everything, and Prabhupada asked him then to come to India, and made him GBC in 1975, after Tamal left, of India, the whole of India, GBC. And then 76, GBC for Russia. USSR in those days. So he was overseeing all these projects in India, Hyderabad, Bombay, even Mayapur at that time. He was GBC in the whole of India, and even now he's probably was GBC for probably half of India. I don't know, a large area of India. He was still GBC. And these places, Mumbai, where his parents were living, his parents moved to Mumbai, and so he also had a strong input into the Mumbai, into the preaching in Mumbai. Another temple just opened a few months ago in Mumbai, in Thane. Huh? Do you remember? He was not just only a bureau, he was, well, maybe not recently, but he was the head of many of the BBT, he was chairman of the BBT trusts, head of the Indian Bureau, ISKCON management organization. So many things he was involved in. So pretty much, almost there was nothing. He was concerned about every little detail and so much involved in so many things. Prabhupada, right from the beginning of when he came to India, Gopal Krishna said, Srila Prabhupada was anxious that book printing in India should expand. There was none at that time. None at all. And he put, Gopal Krishna, you have to make this happen. During my first 2 years, he would press me again and again to print more and more books. Srila Prabhupada was especially pleased when we presented him copies of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in Hindi. So he encouraged him. Now, Prabhupada said, you can utilize your knowledge for marketing for Krishna's service. In every way, he was so expert. This is the perfection, Prabhupada said, of education. When you use your talents, your education, for propagating Krishna consciousness. In 1981, he took sannyas after Prabhupada departed, of course. And in 1982, he was asked to start initiating. So history speaks for itself after that. The openings of temples all over India and in Russia too. He was actively preaching in Russia. Many disciples in Russia. He inspired them to open many temples throughout Russia also. His sadhana was impeccable, as Maharaj may have mentioned the other day. Absolutely like clockwork. Every morning up, sharp, 2, 3 o'clock at the latest. Every morning, whichever temple he was in, he would be on the altar offering Mangal Arti. Even as you said, he only slept 2 hours, he was still offering Mangal Arti. In fact, he rarely slept more than 2 or 3 hours. He didn't sleep much. Very, very little. 3, 4 hours a day, maybe. And his eating, I know from experience, he was eating very little. And very, very simple. We took lunch together just last month, and he just took 1 bowl of soup, that was all. Simple soup. Never ate anything else. And probably he ate something later in the day, but it was very little. And he was always like that. He didn't eat much. He hadn't have time for these things. His mind was too focused on the mission. Spreading Krishna consciousness. No time to get into this. Sometimes we have no time for the mission. We're too busy eating and sleeping. I got no time, Prabhu. I got to sleep. I'm tired. I haven't had enough to eat. I got to find something decent to eat. They only had rice and dal for lunch today. What is this? I'm not going to do any service if they feed me like that. That's not the mood of devotion, I can tell you that. Yes, we should try to make prasad nice. And he was very careful, very affectionate too. He had this other side to him. Of course, in institutional open, when there's a million devotees around, you can't expect much. But otherwise, he had a very concern. How is this one? How is that one? He was very concerned about devotees. And not just the men, the ladies. He was very concerned for all devotees. He had no enemy like that. He didn't consider anyone his enemy. Nobody. He was concerned for everyone. He saw them all as part of Prabhupada's family. Whether they're his disciples or not, that was nothing to do with it. And he worshipped his own deities. He had many deities. And you can see videos of him worshipping his deities, even up to recently. His doctors were trying to tell him, you've got to stop this. Stop going to Mangalarti. Stop worshipping the deities like this. Stop pushing yourself. But he couldn't stop pushing himself. And he left his body in Dehradun 2 days ago. What's he doing in Dehradun? You know where Dehradun is? North of Delhi. It was a famous British kind of station, British administrative station, near one of their favorite, what's it called? I forgot what it's called. Favorite hill stations. They used to go in the summer, it's cooler up there. He's going there for some some meeting they had. I don't know exactly what they're doing. Some kind of devotional meeting that some devotees were going to. Huh?
He was going to initiate devotees there.
He was going to initiate devotees there in Dehradun. I mean, he was going for purely devotional purposes. He was going for a retreat. He never had a retreat. No such thing as a retreat. Always on the attack, always on the battlefield. Right to his last breath, on the battlefield always. He was like Prabhupada, he wanted to leave his body, preaching Krishna consciousness. Of course, the last few moments you could say otherwise, but nobody knows what was going on the last few moments. That's between him, Prabhupada, and Krishna. Such a glorious life and a glorious example to at least try to follow something. Something we can apply in our life. We may not be able to follow it all, but at least something. And the results, and we can see the temples, but just like in Delhi alone, last Christmas marathon, Prabhupada book marathon, the temples together. You know how many Bhagavad Gitas they distributed, those devotees in Delhi? 750,000 Bhagavad Gitas in 1 month. That's something. Who could have imagined that 40 years ago? Just in Delhi. We're not talking to the rest of India. When we had our meeting, the sum up meeting of the campaign, the back to whatever it's called, campaign at the end of the year, for how many Bhagavad Gitas were distributed worldwide, and we're going from one to the next. Fiji, whoa, 3,000 Bhagavad Gitas, or whatever, it wasn't even that much. New Zealand, 7,000, France, 7,000, America, 200,000 or whatever it was, Joy, we're increasing. Our target was 4.7 million, and with every other country put together, it came to about 500,000. And we made our target, India, 4.3 million. It's like, we made the target, India made the target. Come on. Not that we shouldn't try, but let's face it, what's going on in India is unbelievable. They've got devotees doing, online courses with 700,000 people plugged into one course. Including, they said there's 25 university professors on that course, all chanting 16 rounds now from that course. That's what's happening. This is Prabhupada's will, that Krishna consciousness be preached in India also. And then those devotees will go all over the world and preach. That's what's going to come next. One or two here and there are doing that. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. As holy as to Gopal Krishna Maharaj ki jai. Go Premanandi Hari.